Your lab handout does this also pretty nicely for you. It goes through the different functions of the lobes. So, again, frontal lobe, most of these are pretty easy, aren't they? Because, you know, the bones. So, frontal lobes, parietal lobes, temporal lobes, and in the back, occipital lobe. Then we've got this other little lobe that I didn't have to learn 40-something years ago because they don't know they knew about it. This is a little one called the insula or island, and it actually hides deep between the parietal and the temporal lobe, and we'll look at it, but it's just a very small area. So, again, frontal, parietals in the back here, occipitals, and then on the side where you can't see it, we've got temporals. Now, notice this big and pretty straight sulcus. That's one that we're going to have to learn. I'm not going to have you learn all of the separations and many of the sulci, but this one's going to be an important one right here. Notice that's called the central sulcus. So what would we say the central sulcus does? Separates the frontal from the
posterior,
parietal, yeah, in each hemisphere. So on each side, it's separating the frontal lobe from the parietal. And also look at this really prominent or big gyrus here, and also right next to it, one that's pretty big. And notice how kind of straight they are too. These are going to be very important, both of these. So guess what that one is? If it's in front of the central sulcus, what could we call it? The precentral gyrus. So that's here or over here. So the precentral gyrus is part of what lobe?
the frontal.
The frontal lobe. Yeah, the frontal. And the one back here, in back of the central sulcus, is the post-central gyrus. So the post-central gyrus, and again, we're going to talk about the functions of these. That's one reason I'm pointing them out. Is in what lobe? The parietal lobe. Yeah. Okay, and this gives you a pretty good view of that longitudinal fissure. And what are we seeing down there where they're connected? If we could poke down in there. What is that where they're connected?
The ventricles, or
The corpus callosum. Yeah, the corpus callosum is down in there. Okay, so another picture here. And again, this is that central sulcus again. So the blue would be what? The precentral gyrus, and this tan would be the post-central gyrus. This has a lot of functions on it. And again, we're going to talk about, again, a few functions for each lobe. This is showing the insula. And again, the insula is that other little lobe that's kind of hidden. We pulled back the temporal lobe and the part of the frontal and parietal lobes here. And that's where that insula is. Anybody know what gustatory means?
it's for the taste.
Taste, yeah. That is, that's one of the functions here for that insula. As we get to that lobe, we're going to find this taste. What about over here, the temporal? It says auditory.
For hearing?
Hearing, yeah. So temporal, we're going to think hearing. Back here, occipital, it says primary visual cortex and visual association. So that's for vision. Yeah, that's where your optic nerve takes information directly. And when we say primary visual cortex, that's where the picture comes to first. And then what do you think association? It says visual association area here. That, yeah, it's where you figure out what you're looking at. It's, again, the vision comes here, the picture, and then when you figure out, oh, that color's, blue, or that person is this person, that's that association area, figuring it out from memory, yeah. And each of the areas, to do with the major senses, have an association area right next to them. So, again, for speed, I'm sorry, not speed. Again, for, smell or for hearing or whatever, we're going to have an association area right next to the primary area. So primary just means that, that's where the information comes to first. Also, on this picture, let's look at these two again here. This again is part of the parietal lobe, isn't it? And again, what was that called? The post-central gyrus. Let's look at this term out here. It says primary somatosensory cortex. So first of all, somato or somatic, what does somatic mean? What does that term mean?
It means
From the outer part of the body, yeah, outer part of the body. So primary somatosensory cortex, so sensory information from the outer part of your body. So like everything in your skin, it's all going there. So like touch, feel, pain, hot, cold, all of it's going here. So that's again what we call your primary somatosensory cortex. And then look here, and again, so that would be a function of the parietal lobe, right? Is all the information on senses coming from, most of your outer part of your body. This is where you control your skeletal muscles. So this, what do we call that? The precentral gyrus is part of your frontal lobe. That's where you control your muscles. So where are we saying that? Doesn't actually say that on here, does it? Oh yeah, here. Okay, primary motor cortex. So again, primary motor cortex, it says in the precentral gyrus. So all of this, and we can actually point to specific areas and say, oh, this controls the muscles in your forearm or in your leg or in your face. We know exactly, where those are going to. But that's where you start, the thought of moving your arm or whatever you want to move. So that's in control of your skeletal muscles. So that's another function of the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe has a lot of different functions, but again, motor control, controlling your skeletal muscles. Frontal lobe. Yeah.
Why wouldn't the insula be a part of the frontal lobe? Why
It's
is
not
it,
part of it.
But why wouldn't it
Oh,
be?
why?
Since it's in there?
Because it's deep to it, and it has its own little cortex. It's like it is separate. When you look in there, there's a separate cortex. Whereas any other part of the brain, if you look deep to the gyri and sulci, you would see white matter. This is more gray matter.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually gray matter that's hidden down in there by itself.